Hello, everyone, and welcome to Pro Wrestling Inside and Out Live. We are going to continue our look at Georgia Championship Wrestling, not really following any kind of timeline. We're just talking Georgia Championship Wrestling. I think a person, Rodney, that made an impact in Georgia Championship Wrestling but didn't last very long was Bruiser Brody. Bruiser Brody could do that interview like no other.
Yeah, he was massive. I mean, he was big. He was vicious. He was not like any of the others. Not even like Stan Hansen or King Kong Moss, the bigger guys. He was extreme, and the poor guys that had to wrestle against him. It was brutal in some cases when he was out there, but and Gordon was doing a great job with him. He said, "You gave that man no chance," and he said, "So nobody gave me any chances when I first started either. I'm teaching these guys something out here." I thought it was great.
You know, one of his best interviews, this is what he said. He said, "You know what, Gordon? You know what I did? People beat me up, and I took notes, and now I beat people up." And I thought, man, what an interview. What an interview.
Occasionally, I think Gordon really got he got some heat with Gordon because he would grab Gordon. And Gordon was at the point where he had just had his injury. I think he fell off the ring in Tampa, and he hurt his hip. So Gordon didn't like to be manhandled, and I think in this particular one he did a couple of times, and you could tell Gordon was not amused whatsoever. In fact, there was one of them where it took a long time for Gordon to start picking up or doing the commentary. I'm assuming he was in the back having a few choice words.
I wouldn't put it past Gordon Soley. He did not like to be grabbed a hold of. We get very upset when stuff would happen. Brody wouldn't last long. Brody was there. Buck Robley was the booker of Georgia Championship Wrestling at the time. An unfortunate accident happened, or I wouldn't say an accident. I guess it was more like an incident happened with Bruiser Brody. Rodney, you could tell him a little bit about what happened.
Yeah, as a opponent, I forget who it was, got put in a wheelchair. Of course, there was two wheelchairs in that studios for whatever reason, not sure why, but there was always two wheelchairs in the studio, and one was set off, and apparently it got moved. Apparently Brody moved it so he could do what he was going to do. So he put his opponent in it, and he rolled him up to the set, and then he kicked him out of it. Well, Turner Broadcasting did not appreciate that, and apparently called Jim Barnett into the office. He had to go meet at the office, and needless to say, Buck Robley and Bruiser Brody both were dismissed right after that.
And, it was sad because even though Brody scared me to death in his matches, because you knew he wasn't going to stay in the ring. I don't know that he ever stayed in the ring. I think he always fought all over the place. I remember him in Carrollton, Georgia. I can remember telling our father, Ron West, I said, "Listen, it's just not fun because she's going to wrestle out on the floor. It's just not fun for you." And I didn't really like to see that often, because if you knew he was going to do it, it's one thing. If you didn't know they were going to do it, that's another. But you knew Bruiser Brody was going to go outside the ring. It just was not fun.
That was primarily for Georgia that I've noticed. I'm not sure. Maybe he was trying something that nobody else was doing, and he thought that might be the best way of getting over. He would have gotten over, but I think that he was in the wrong position. Yeah. I think that instead, if Freebirds were there, I believe he would have been a great foil to face the Freebirds. Yeah. Because basically at that point, Freebirds had no equal. There was no balance. They were dominating everybody, and I thought Bruiser Brody would have been perfect to be in the position to go against him.
Yeah, I think Brody could have done very well, but as things went, he got fired along with Buck Robley, which caused a lot of problems.
Yeah, called the Freebirds to leave, and yeah, it was not a good point.
Let's talk right now about Mr. Wrestling 2. There's nobody. I think if you looked at somebody as a wrestler in Atlanta, I don't think that there was anyone that drew as much money as Wrestling 2. What do you think?
No. He was in the right place at the right time. I'll just tell you that much right now. And it got to the point in Georgia that if you didn't have Wrestling 2 on the card, you didn't have a card. It didn't draw. And that's what Dad said. It just got to the point where if you didn't have Wrestling 2 on the card, you wouldn't draw. And I mean, that was everywhere. And sometimes they were running 2 towns a night. On Thursday night, they would run Rome, Georgia, and Athens. And then on Saturdays, they would Carrollton and Griffin. And if 2 wasn't on the card, you can forget it. That's how over he was. He was almost superhero status in Georgia.
You have to give credit to Tim Woods, Mr. Wrestling 1, because prior to that, he was in the same league as Wrestling 2. So did Tim Woods, being as over as he was, help Wrestling 2 get over that well? And maybe wrestling him also helped?
Sure. All of it put together. But yeah, Mr. Wrestling 1 was also big. I remember some big houses with Wrestling 1 against Dick Slater in Columbus, Georgia. I remember going to seeing one of those, and the place was packed. And Tim Woods, very different than Wrestling 2. He had the sleeper hold, whereas Wrestling 2 had the knee lift. And so they were still Mr. Wrestling, but they were very different. And as a team together, probably drew more together as a team against the Andersons than they did against each other, I would assume.
Yeah, Wrestling 2, one of the first things I remember seeing him was against the Spoiler. They had some classic matches with each other. And I can remember when the Spoiler left and the Superstar came in, we thought it was the same person.
Yep, we sure did. We accused him of being the same person. Dad, we did swear up and down. No, it wasn't. No, and I said, no, he's the same person. It wasn't.
And it wasn't, but man, you thought it was. I mean, they had the same build. They looked the same. But the Spoiler, that man just coming out would scare you.
Yeah.
That mask was just intimidating, as no other mask man ever was. And I think with being Gary Hart being there with them as well help things out as well. Pack Song, Wrestling 2 and Pack Song, another thing that drew a ton of money, and I think probably was the first person who actually hurt Wrestling 2 and put them out of action for a while. I think hit him. If I'm correct, didn't he hit him with a stool?
Hit him with Gordon Soley's stool in the interview. Although there was another injury with Wrestling 2 with Toru Tanaka, maybe a year before, because when 2 first comes back to go against Pac Song, he goes against Toru Tanaka first, because Tanaka had done something to him, I think the year before.
Well, it's Wrestling 2 had a lot of great feuds. Pac Song, the Spoiler, the Superstar, the Assassins, Jody Hamilton. Now, it probably didn't draw as much money as Pac Song, the Spoiler, and Superstar. But when people talk about the history of wrestling, they talk about the Assassins against Wrestling 2 and Wrestling 1. So it's people do remember that vividly. And in the end, he had a feud with the living legend Larry Zbyszko.
Yes, and we're leaving out one of the best ones, Dick Slater.
Dick Slater, yeah.
Dick Slater and him. I mean, we went for I think 2 months with Slater against Wrestling 2 at Rome, Georgia's Memorial Gym, and that place I think held about 3,000 people, and it was packed. But that whole summer was hot in Georgia, and it was hot at the Rome Memorial Gym, and it was packed to the rafters to see 2 and Dick Slater, and basically the only match on the card.
Yeah, because they only have like 4 matches. Maybe you have 10 guys on the whole card. But Wrestling 2 and Dick Slater would wrestle for about 30 minutes every week, and did that for about 7 weeks in a row. He had "I'm the Turkey" on the back of his. Dick Slater had to wear a mask that said "I'm a Turkey," and ended up using that mask to win the Georgia Heavyweight Championship. Just so much.
And then decided he was going to keep it, and so then it was mask versus mask, Slater against 2, and of course at the time, Dick Slater was a Georgia Heavyweight Champion. For weeks it was 2 beating Slater every week while he's having, and he had to keep wearing the mask until he beat 2. Well, he finally did with the Georgia Heavyweight Championship on the line. it was the Slater with the Georgia Heavyweight Championship on the line, and that's when Randy Savage slid Dick Slater an object. He loaded the mask up and hit 2 with it, and he beat Wrestling 2. And then he decided that he liked that mask so much he was going to keep it. So then there was the mask versus mask 2 against Slater.
Yeah, I would think. I would think Wrestling 2. If I was to put somebody that drew as much money in a probably a 10-year period from 1973 till 1983, you have to give that to Wrestling 2 as being the guy that drew the most money. Dusty Rhodes drew money, but I don't think he drew as much money as Wrestling 2 did for about a 10-year period there. And so I would put Wrestling 2 up there as one of the best wrestlers in Georgia Championship Wrestling. On our next episode, we will look at other things to talk about on Georgia Championship Wrestling. We were there for over 11 years, so there's a lot that we could talk about. And on the next episode, when we look at Georgia Championship Wrestling, we'll look at others that were a part of Georgia Championship Wrestling. If you enjoyed this video, give us a big thumbs up. The big thumbs up. And subscribe to the page, and go one step further. Hit that notification bell. It will let you know every time we upload a video right here on Pro Wrestling Inside and Out. Until then, on behalf of Rodney West, I'm Brent West, and we'll see you again on Pro Wrestling Inside and Out.